Hello again. Today I'm going to talk about why you might get dropped on hills, or if you're out with a group of friends or out on a training club ride, then why you might get dropped. And so it's often that you get dropped on hills, and a lot of people might think, well, that's because you're not very good at riding up hills. Well, that's not really likely to be the case, because if you think back, if you were trying to ride up the particular hill that you get dropped on from the start at the speed that you're trying to ride it, you'd probably be okay. You'd probably be able to stay with the group. So what I mean really is if you join the group at the start of the hill, rode up it with them, you'd be fine. But it's because you've actually used up a lot of energy on the way to getting to that hill. So the reason is that you're using up a lot of energy due to the fact that you're riding so close to your limit on the way to the hill, and these rides are often quite variable. So what's happening is you're having to go above your anaerobic threshold, use up what's known as your anaerobic capacity, or if you use a tool called WKO, FRC, functional reserve capacity. I can't remember what Strava calls it, but basically it's you've got a limit to how much energy you have available above your FTP. And you don't have to be using a power meter for any of this, it's just the theory. And once you've used up that energy, you have to go below your FTP, below your anaerobic threshold, to recover that energy, and then be able to go up anaerobic again. But if you're riding that close to your FTP, obviously you can't recover. So if you go above your anaerobic threshold, above your FTP for a period of time, then drop back down to your FTP, you're never recovering that anaerobic capacity. And a good way to illustrate this is on a chart. I use WKO5 here. You can use Golden Cheetah, and both of which are really good tools. And they show you this, what's known as dynamic FRC in WKO, and I'm not sure what it's called in Golden Cheetah, but it's got a similar name. And basically, it's a measure of how much anaerobic energy you've got left to use at any given point in your ride. So we'll have a quick look at this chart here. So this is an athlete that I coach, and we were just discussing this yesterday about why he got dropped in the club ride, and he got dropped at this point here at an hour and 40. But you can see here that from the start he was struggling. If you look at the top chart, it shows how much time you spent above your FTP, and that's all the red dots. So a lot of time above FTP in the first hour and 40, where he's trying to hang on to the group. And then things smooth out a bit after. You can see that his power's a bit below FTP, so he's getting a chance to recover some of his anaerobic capacity. And he rides to the end of the just over 3 hour ride. He was on his own then, and usually when you're on your own, things aren't so variable. It's like a sort of fairly hard endurance ride. But you can see here, he had to dig really deep to stay with the group. And actually what he told me afterwards was that somebody else had got dropped, and then he managed to recover. You can see this sort of easy period here, and that sort of allowed him to recover his anaerobic capacity sufficiently to stay with the group for another hour of riding, which was great for him, and it meant he got a really good training session. A lot of tools nowadays give you an idea of your anaerobic training impact, how effective was the training, and here it says it's a 9 out of 10 for aerobic and a 10 out of 10 for anaerobic. So a pretty effective training session, even though he got dropped halfway through the ride. So if you like these videos, please give this one a like, subscribe to my channel. It'd be really helpful for me, and I'll keep making them, and hopefully you're enjoying them and learning something from them, and make some comments so that I can learn from you as well. So what can you do about it? Well, you can try and improve your anaerobic capacity. So if you've got a power meter and a tool to estimate what your anaerobic capacity is, then you can try and improve that value. So if you're a male athlete, say 70 or 80 kilos, if your anaerobic capacity is about 10 kilojoules, then you could probably improve that. If it's at 20 or 24 above that, unless you're an elite rider or a very good rider, you might not be able to improve it very much, so that's not an area to work towards. And if you don't have a power meter, it's very difficult to measure it, but you can still do training sessions to try and improve things and get a feel for, why do you think you're getting dropped? Are you getting dropped because when you have to make a lot of sharp efforts, or are you really struggling to stay with the bunch at the sort of when they're riding at a smooth pace, or if there's a gradual surge? And that sort of might give you an idea of where to make the most effective improvements can be made. And the other thing to do, obviously, is if you can improve your power or your pace at the anaerobic threshold, then you're spending less time going anaerobic. So you go anaerobic at a higher pace, and as a consequence, you're using up less of your anaerobic capacity. So if you have a look back at the chart, you can see that this line here, the dark line on the lower chart, is the FTP. So every time he goes above that line, he's using up anaerobic capacity. You see where he had a big period of time above it, he used up a lot. It's sort of available anaerobic capacity went down. And so if you can raise that line, which is improving your FTP, improving your pace or power at anaerobic threshold, then you can see that less of the power spikes are going to be above that, and therefore using less of your anaerobic capacity. If you do intervals at around your sort of max aerobic sort of power, they've shown to be pretty much the same as sort of threshold intervals that are building your FTP. So, but also when you do those efforts, you go in anaerobic, so because you're doing these efforts are above your FTP, so like 105, 110% of your FTP. Don't worry if you don't have a power meter, you just sort of do them as hard as you can. And do the efforts from a good session might be 6 by 3 minutes with 3 minutes recovery, but you can do efforts from 1 to 5 minutes with the same amount of recovery as your effort. And if you're getting dropped on hills, then you can make them a little bit more specific and do them uphill. If you do them on the hill that you get dropped on, then on the group rides, then it's very specific, and you get to know that hill and you know where the top is, so you can sort of mentally you can improve your performance a bit as well. And what these do is they're improving your anaerobic capacity as well as improving your FTP, your anaerobic threshold. So you're getting, 2 bangs for your buck. It's obviously it's not the most effective way of improving your anaerobic capacity, but it is going to be effective, and it's also getting you used to these sort of 1 minute efforts or sort of thing. Where you can see here, it spent a few minutes above his FTP here before he got dropped. So if you're getting used to, like if you can get used to sort of suffering for 3 or 4 minutes, then that's quite mentally quite effective as well. So this isn't really the traditional way to train. Everybody says you should spend your winter going into sort of winter training base period doing sort of base miles. But if you can get to a point where you can ride with a group, with your friends, or out on the club ride, and stick with it till the end, it's going to make your training much more enjoyable. It's going to make you, more motivated. Mentally, it's easier for you to know that you're not getting dropped every week. So from that side of things, it's making your training a bit better. It's sort of raised your, it raises your average speed. So as long as you're getting enough recovery after the ride, then you're getting more out of it. As you can see, this ride here is giving him sort of pretty high values for both anaerobic and aerobic training. So there's lots of bonuses to getting a little bit of a boost at the start of the season, so that you can stay with the group ride, get the most out of that, and then you can add in your other stuff around it. Just make sure you get plenty of recovery, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.